All right, hey folks, we are once again live, at least according to the little control console I've got to look at over here. It says we should be live. Hopefully the thing will confirm that in just a moment. Hi, welcome. You've reached the ComicBase live stream. We're out here in Franklin, Tennessee. I would say a beautiful day, except it being the South and all, I don't know what kind of day it is, because 2 seconds ago it was thunder and raining, end of the world kind of stuff, and then, just moments later, it's barely a cloud in the sky, and now it's fogging up again. So if the show ends and the world ends during the whole thing, we'll know later. All right, let's get to it. Hopefully, I'm looking at the multi-view here. We should have. Let's get the camera going. And well, this is kind of fun. I'm having a hard time switching the camera to actually cut over to me. Let's see what we can do here. And there we go. All right. One thing you guys probably don't know is we lost the I lost my switcher commands. I have a little Stream Deck. It's a little a device with just a ton of little buttons on it, which I set up last time out. With all the macros to kick the show off, get it working right, and have everything not go completely haywire, like things are wont to do. But anyway, in the process of installing a new graphic card moments ago, in order to not have the horrible shrieking of fans in the distance while we're doing the show, we lost certain settings. So we hopefully will be up perfectly strong next time out, and it'll be a show the producers will be so proud of, I'm sure. Anyway, please post your questions to the show chat over on YouTube, and also while you're there, if you could hit the like and subscribe buttons while you're at it, it actually does help quite a bit. The theory actually is that if you hit the like button right at the start, YouTube actually sends out the notifications to the people who've subscribed. Otherwise, unless you hit the little bell to be notified every time, you actually don't get notified until halfway through the broadcast, in which case it's a little late. Anyway, so let me check, make sure we have the chat running, and then we will be off at long last. Let's see here. I'm actually not seeing the live chat here. Let me check it from the other control panel. Hopefully it will show up there. That would be really neat. And where are we at? H2R graphics. I am, oh, there we go. Okay, wow, okay, that just popped in. Okay, awesome. It's lovely how everything is something new happens every time. Okay, so on to the actual news of the show. So couple bits of news. The big one today is we finally made ComicBase 20.0.3 official. You say, wow, 20.0.3, that sounds so exciting, Bickford. I mean, tell me, what do I care about a 0.3 release? And the answer is there's a list of about 30 or so changes we made even since the last release. There's about 100 worth noting changes since ComicBase 2020 came out originally. The newest release does everything from we mentioned things like it works much better on high-resolution monitors if you have a low-resolution monitor and your setup are dragging windows back and forth between the two. We made some tweaks to Sidekick, which allow it to work better if you're in using the menu commands to invoke updates to multiple databases. That one just came in as a late-breaking change, so if you've got it in the last couple weeks, it's worth downloading the release version just to get that one in there as well. Looking over at my notes here, I mentioned last time mass change. I was starting to make a point during one of our speed tips that mass change, you could use it to bump your price up by an algorithmic amount. So for instance, you could set you could mass change all your prices in your database to be the current value times 75%, 0.75, which would allow you to effectively say all my prices are 25% below guide. Well, that's great, but what if I want to say all my prices are 20% of what they were last week? And it actually, until I tried demoing that and realized, oh, wait a minute, you can't mass change a thing to itself, which in other words, you can't change the price to a function of the price. So that was a little embarrassing, so we fixed that, and now you can. Other things like you can, it's easier to download the Blu-ray editions onto a hard drive and install them to your machine, even if you haven't put them in the folders we expected. What else? When you're adding issues by barcode, you can now change the asking price right from there if you like. whole bunch of stuff. Have a look at the release notes, what I'm cribbing off of, and I'll show you it. I'll drag it over to the other monitor here. And hopefully this will actually, yes, thank God the transitions are now working. Where you find the release notes, and this is worth knowing, over on ComicBase.com, if you go under support, and then go down to ComicBase 2020 updaters, and this will take you to the page which shows all the changes that have happened in the last update. So this is in the last major one right here, and this is what we've done since the release, is the much bigger list down below. So have a look at the whole list, and please go ahead and download the software. You can download it from your registrations now. So basically just go up under My Account, go to Registrations, and when you download the product links, it'll update your current software, and you'll be good to go. You will need to, because this is an official release, you're going to need to do that before the next content update. Otherwise, the content update will say, unless you have at least ComicBase 20.0.3, some build of that, the content update will say, whoa, dude, you got to back up and update your program first, because it's the only way we really have of forcing people to kind of get onto the current version, so that we're not supporting like 20 old versions of ComicBase at the same time. So please do that when you get a chance. We think you'll like it, and it should convert out without any real note, problems of any kind of note. It's a pretty straightforward update. And also, unlike older updates we used to have, you no longer need to uninstall things before you install things. You can just download the update, the registration, run the installer, and it'll take care of you. So there you go. All right, so other things that are of interest. So in a normal world, which clearly we are not in, this would be Comic-Con this week. And we would all be down at the San Diego Convention Center during most years. We didn't go the last year or two because, we felt like the show had changed a bit, and now obviously the show just went away. But I would have been down there anyway, just hanging out with folks and seeing the seeing the show floor, revisiting old friends. One thing I really enjoy about just being in the comic industry for, God, it's coming up on 30 years in just a year or so, is we started out, the first time we were able to ever show ComicBase, we would show it at comic shows. We started out at WonderCon in Oakland, California, and took it on the road from there. Comic-Con in San Diego and Chicago and whatnot. We've really been all over the place. But Comic-Con was the show we would always go back to every year. And so as a result, that was the show that we really I got to see a lot of you guys at. And honestly, I miss you guys. You know who you are. It's just a thrill showing you like what we've been up to, and also just seeing you guys and just putting the face to face to the whole interaction for once. And I do miss that a lot. And so standing offer, when I do get down there, and hopefully we'll all be seeing each other in next year in real life, as they sort of IRL in life, is anyone who's on the top 200 of the ComicBase leaderboard. The drinks are on me at any bar of your choosing in San Diego for submissions. And honestly, anyone who's just a ComicBase customer and just wants to hang out and chat, I'm always happy to. And also, I was really looking forward to the ComicBase user group meeting this year because I was going to get to show off ComicBase 2020. But anyway, that didn't happen, so we have a live stream. Anyway, lacking Comic-Con this year, the folks over at San Diego Comic-Con did try to do something new, which is they are trying to do a virtual Comic-Con. Now, I'm going to say, I'm the first one to say I'm skeptical of the whole concept. It's just, it doesn't seem like it would be the same. But that said, I am going to go and put the information in the show notes of how to get to that. And they do have a fair amount of programming that's worth looking at. They have everything from portfolio reviews if you're an artist or an aspiring comics writer or a creator, to all sorts of spotlighted interviews and features with various creators and folks in the comic industry. They're trying. It's probably as good as you could do given our current situation, but let's see what it's like. I'm going to try to dip in at least a few times during the going of the show. And also, I know there's a couple folks who during the show have it's a big sales cycle for everyone. It's usually the time when we would release new versions of the software. It used to be all around Comic-Con, but there are folks who have different specials, things, especially collectibles that involve fabrication that take a lot and lots of time and licensing and stuff like that. There are virtual Comic-Con exclusives and virtual Comic-Con, I know Factory Entertainment's do a lot of stuff with a lot of their prop replicas and things like that. Again, I'm not gonna kid you, it doesn't seem like the same thing by a long chalk, but, it's worth looking at, and I'll try to post a few links in the show notes. All right, that is most of the news type stuff I wanted to get to right now. Let me have a quick look at the chat, and I will try to hit questions as we go. Okay, refreshing. All right, cool. Oh my goodness. So I am trying a new version of H2R Graphics. Which is a program for putting up graphics and the whole thing. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see most of that this week, but again, hopefully next week we'll be good to go. Let me hit a couple comments right off the top. Ronald asks, he basically says, I haven't bought a new comic book since 2003. I'd like to keep the values up, but is there a cheaper way for me to do that without having to shell out for the full software or to get a lot of information about comic books he no longer collects? And the answer is yeah, basically there is. One thing you could do, regardless of what version of ComicBase you're running from, is if literally the only thing you want is new prices, is you could go and just upgrade, if you have any version of ComicBase, upgrade and get like the upgrade version of Express. You're entitled to it if you want. It's a pretty serious feature downgrade if you're using, anything like ComicBase Archive Edition and ComicBase Professional Edition. If you do have Archiver Pro, and again, you're in that situation where you literally have no interest in new pictures or new stuff like that, you just want pricing, even if it won't suggest it to you when you go to the order site, but if you go to the products page and you go and you say, I want to get the professional edition, or it'll offer it to you at the upgrade price if you owned a previous professional or archive edition, and if you owned a previous express edition, you can get the new express edition for just like $50, which is, it's like the price of a hardcover Overstreet, or maybe it's basically $1 a week. I wouldn't suggest doing that if you are collecting new stuff, particularly if you have an archive edition and you have, if you only get the professional upgrade, you're going to lose the ability to keep downloading covers, which is kind of huge these days, especially when you talk about variants. But if pricing is all you're looking for, it's not a bad way to go. And it comes out to, like I say, about the price of a hardcover Overstreet. So not a bad thing. Let's see what else we got going on here. Scott says, I'm installing the new update as we speak. God, I hope it goes well for you. Let's see here. And John says, I stopped scanning comics into the ComicBase so I could watch this. All right, cool. Okay, our graphic novels, Oro VOS, our graphic novels, standard comic book style panels, text bubbles, always in the comics group, even if they're written as a standalone publication, not intended to have ongoing issues. Yes, is the question about that. So this goes back to the question of what's a comic book, what's a book, what's a magazine, right? And it basically falls down to this. If you're talking about telling the story through graphics and words, if there's a word balloon in it anywhere, it's going to wind up in the comics section. If it's something that is not, if it's a story told just with words, it's going to be a book. If it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, might have a whole run of comic books to go with it, but when they do a Buffy novelization and there's only the occasional graphic or the occasional illustration to it, but you're not telling the story with the pictures, at that point that becomes a novel. And that goes over in books. When you expect the thing to come out frequently, or at least according to some kind of schedule, at that point it becomes a magazine. If the idea is that even if it's in a particular format that's characteristic of, say, a trade paperback or something like that, if it's a fan content type of thing and it's going to come out regularly, I'm thinking about, say, art books, right? An art book might be a portfolio, of a certain artist, right? In which case it'd go under books. But if it's this guy, if it's Jim Lee Quarterly, right, or Jim Lee Monthly Portfolio or something like that, that's going to wind up being a magazine, because you introduce the whole idea of periodicity, which, gosh, I hope that's a real word, because we've used it in the program at this point, because you get to say that this thing, it's a periodical, right? It comes out on a regular schedule like this, and so it's like it isn't just I expect one about once a year. It's just like I expect one next month. I expect one in 6 months' time, or I expect one in next week, or whatever the thing is. So that'd be a periodical. So that's really the breakdown between whether something's considered a book or a magazine or a comic book. All right, let's see here. Let's see here. Comic book. I think we hit that. All right. So, what's in the book? And Greg's already answering the question for you. Had I scrolled down, I wouldn't need any answer because Greg Hecht would have gotten it. Okay, so yes, and Greg points out nobody goes to Comic-Con anymore. It's too crowded. Yes, man, social distancing would not be a thing at Comic-Con. It's everything you can do to walk sideways through the aisles during all the peak times. And we literally one of the fun things about it from a tech standpoint is you've got 150,000 people in a very, very tight area in basically a concrete bunker, and they regularly bring down the cell tower, and just in terms of the overload. And we are trying to demonstrate a program that relies very heavily on internet connectivity. We have tried every solution known to man to make that happen. The worst of which is the one where you actually go to the show and you rent the internet from the show providers themselves, where they give you like one drop of a Ethernet cable, and that is, I want to say the last time we did it was like $1,500 for 4 days was what they charged for the rent. It was nuts. Okay, the competent man says, when I start ComicBase, it'll load and then the screen will disappear into the bottom of the monitor and nothing will turn up. What has happened to you, competent man, is somehow you've managed to get the program to open off screen. So basically, let me see if I can show what that looks like. So let's go ahead and hide my web browser here, and here's what you would typically be looking at when you're looking at ComicBase, right? And when you look down here, you see there's my ComicBase icon down at the bottom. So when all you're seeing is this, right? What's happened is your program window is off the screen. So you'll see that the whole thing is still there, but you can't see the window. I've moved it most of the way off the screen, but if you're really clever, there are ways to get it to go entirely off the screen. We try to not make that happen, but if you were very clever, maybe you found a way to make that happen anyway. So one thing you can do is if you hover the mouse over the square at the bottom here, and you, let me see if I can make that happen, if I get the right one. So if you hover the mouse over the square, and I used to know how to do this, I swear to God. Give me just a second. Oh, there we are. Yeah, and one of the tricks that's going on here is I'm kind of cheating the program right now because I didn't have time to fully install it. So I'm not really running ComicBase. I'm running the development copy. Let's see if I can do it with another window. So let's say I've got this guy over here. If you right click on the little black square or whatever else that pops up, what you're going to do is you're going to be given a series of menu items on the command. If you can hit minimize, maximize, restore, that will immediately pop it back into place. But a really useful one is if you hit the move command right here, and then you use the arrow keys on your keyboard, up, down, left, right, and you'll suddenly see that the window will pop back onto screen because it'll try to find a place where it can be displayed, and at which point, when that's done, close the program normally, exit it, and you won't have a problem again because it'll have remembered your last window position. Like I say, the program tries pretty hard when you are first using it to try to make sure it doesn't get opened off screen, but despite our best efforts, there are weird things that can happen with Windows graphic regions that trick us into opening off screen anyway. So that's what the whole deal down there with the move and those commands is. So like I say, hover over the little square, right click, and then choose move, and then use the arrow keys, and that should take care of you. Okay, let's go back to the chat here, and click the upper right corner, format. Okay, when I click the upper right hand corner to open the list of contents, there's exactly a 4-minute long delay before the listings appear. Okay, that's a bummer. We hit this one a couple shows ago. So what he's talking about here is the title list over here, which in one of our speed tips we talked about how you really don't want to use that if you can avoid it. I'm going to close the window and then open up on here so it remembers where it was. So and of course it wants to do it over where it was before anyway. You notice on my machine it's not 4 minutes, it's more like 3 seconds. Still could be annoying. What's going on with that is it's having to load into memory and build a list out of 60,000 items, which is all the items in ComicBase. That does take a little while. Unfortunately, if your machine's really slow, the only thing you can do to make that faster is get a better machine. It's just one of those things where, you know, it takes what it takes. Now, the good news is you don't need to do that at all. It's the titles window is cool when you want to browse everything in the database, but it's not a great way to go in general. Typically, what I do is I wouldn't go there at all. What I would do is I would just go to the main search bar up here, where it says enter title name or barcode, and if you do have a barcode, just go straight there. But if you want to go to something like, I don't know, Avengers Endgame or something, just type ENDGAME, and or Marvel's Avengers Endgame Prelude. But as fast as I can type, it's going to be filling in the lists of things, and so this takes no time. This is definitely how I would suggest, steering around the database for almost all circumstances. If I need to go from title to title, I wouldn't go to the titles window at all. But if you do have a really long delay getting to the titles, and one good thing about the titles window is it does let you do something that the other one doesn't. Is it lets you say, show me only the titles I have in stock, which is going to be for most people a much smaller list. All right, and let me go ahead in just a second. Power that off. Okay. All right. So, other questions we have here. Big Little Books are books. Can't think of the reason people can't submit them to get them added to the database. Big Little Books are submittable. You might want to. This is a question from Greg. You might want to go ahead and send a query to support@comicbase.com, so it goes to one of our editors. If you're having trouble submitting the Big Little Books, they shouldn't be a problem. I can't recall offhand where they're all slotted in, but I do believe, let me see if this is updated here. Big Little, the Big Little Book, that's the Big Little Book. Big Little Books, I wonder if the editors are just having trouble because it's a pretty complicated thing to add for that series because it was so involved. But anyway, if you send us a note to support@comicbase.com, I'm sure they'll try to answer your question on that one. I'm not the frontline editor. I often get brought in to settle arguments, but I'm not the most clever person when it comes to some of these decisions. Support@comicbase.com will be able to tell you. All right, so let's see here. Tell them except half the screen. Why? Another competent question. So, Competent Man, let me go and switch to the main screen here. If you can see it, and let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger to make it a little easier to see. Okay, sure. So if you can see right down here, as I approach the top of the grid, my cursor changes to those lines right there. What I can do is I can click and move that up and down. There's a certain upper limit and a bottom limit because there's certain things where we've got to be able to show some stuff. We can't size it up to the very top, but we can size it up pretty far. But you can control yourself how much of the screen that takes. If I really, really love me some big pictures, I can go there. If I really like having the densest conceivable amount of information, I can go there. One thing to watch out for is there is a minimum amount of space required to see the grid. So if you do like seeing the value graph, you'll notice it's going to size down a bit in order to show that. And that's basically the smallest we can go to fit everything we need to fit on there. So make your own trade-offs is however works best for you would be the way I would go on that. Let's see here. Let's see here. Try Slider 999A says tried scanning labels that I printed out would not work, but I can scan the barcode on the comic. Barcode. Yeah, I guess I'd want to see some more information about what you're doing exactly. Let me see if I can do this really quick. All right, so I've got somewhere around here. We just got sent. No, I was all professional and stuff, and I actually cleared the scene down before the show, so I don't actually have any comic books in my office just at the moment. But what I was going to suggest, if I can look around and see anything, oh wait, hang on, there is something. Hold on. Okay, so this is Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. As you guys can see, barcode on the back. Alright, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead, go under the items menu. I'm going to say add by barcode, or control I. You guys remember the speed tips ones? I almost never use the menus these days if I can possibly use a barcode. Or use a control key. Alright, so what I'm going to do, pull up my handy dandy barcode scanner, and let's go ahead and beep that barcode in. Alright. Okay, so now, you guys will also remember, whether or not I want to display items after saving or print divider labels for new titles. Right now, I'm just going to go ahead and save that guy right there. I'm going to print the divider label because I need one, because I don't have this in my collection yet. Alright, so it's kicking out a divider label, and I'm going to go down here, highlight the one I just did, and I'm going to hit F6, and I'm going to print an ID label for it. Notice I said I'm going to go ahead and include the barcodes. It really helps if I choose the right camera angle as I'm talking, doesn't it? Alright, so let me back that up a little bit. So this is after I scanned it in, this is what I got. I highlight the line, I hit F6 to pull up the ID labels, I hit print, alright, and I'm going to get an ID label. Alright, and let me go ahead and pull this back to me and pull this off my printer. Alright, so this is what we just got. And what is the closest this camera can focus? So there's my my ID labels for the thing. I had them print for one for the front and the back of the divider label, and that's the one for the comic itself. Alright, now if you guys have a look at this guy, it's sort of interesting if you're a complete geek like me, because what it does is, if you can see the little tiny writing on the whole thing, it says B4709729792D, which has nothing to do with the barcode of the actual comic book. What it does have to do with, though, is the barcode of this particular line entry in my collection. So it will only work for this database. It will not work for another guy's database. It only works for mine. But if I want to go directly to Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey 2nd Series, and let me go ahead and close that up so you can see that I'm not cheating. I'm just going to go to a completely different title. Now I can come up under here, and I'm going to scan in this barcode. Alright, and there we are. You see it magically took me to Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. Now, let me go back there to the barcode, and so one thing about this is it took me to this particular record in the database. Which is to say, if I had a second copy of Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey 2nd Series #2, and I had it in, very fine condition, or or anything else like that, there was just a separate copy of it, it would go to that record instead. It really is specific to this particular record. So let me go ahead. I'm just going to show you that is actually a real thing. All right. So I've just added a second copy here in very fine condition. I did that with the duplicate command, which I guess if I was really clever, I'd be showing, telling you what I'm doing there so that you could see that as a tutorial. All right, and what I'm going to do now, again, go to a completely different title, just so you know I'm not cheating. Scan back to this guy, and it takes me to not the second one, but the first one, because that was that record. Now, okay, if that didn't happen for you, what could be going on? One of two things. Well, one of a few things, I guess. First thing I would suspect is you might not be getting, your barcode scanner might not be configured to scan everything that's on the label properly. Which is to say, basically the rules for barcode scanning in ComicBase is any barcode scanner that scans everything that's human readable, the stuff at the very bottom, and doesn't add anything extra will work. So it works exactly as, as far as your computer's concerned, a barcode scanner is just a really fast keyboard. So if I were just to type B47097292D, it would take me to the same thing just the same way as if I scanned it. So if it's not going there, it could be that your barcode scanner isn't delivering up the goods the way it was printed. And another thing that could be happening is you might be opening a different database than the one that generated the label, in which case it won't match, because these things really are, they're locked down to a particular database. And then finally, the other thing might be is if you're using an older style label. We used to use a styling comic base called Code 3 of 9. You could tell because the codes will all start with a percentage sign, and they were very, very long. There were a number of things that would throw those off. One of them would be spaces. It's an older type of symbology for barcodes, and it had its limits. So if you had things like annuals, like annual 14, ANL space 14, those wouldn't, we would do some things to try to gimmick them so they would work anyway, but there's no space in code 3 of 9, so that would be a problem. It's one of the reasons we switched to a format called CodaBar for the latest iteration of ComicBase, so that we don't have any of those problems anymore. And also, one thing that the old versions of ComicBase used to do is they would treat any comic book that was the same grade, same title, and the same issue. So, so any copy of Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey second series number 2 that is in near mint condition, it would be considered as if it was the same thing. So it didn't let you do things like saying, hey, I want to track, I bought 10 copies of this all at different prices, and I had all sorts of notes associated with them. And when I sell one, I want to go straight to that issue, not just any old issue that matches the same grade. The old version of ComicBase didn't used to do that. The new one does. So that would be my suggestions for where to look on that question. Let's see where else we are. Special price comparison box ever used to automatically come on when you clicked on individual issue numbers. We're hitting all the kind of tried and true ComicBase 2020 questions. This is again the question of if you're looking at the graph here in the upper right, or for that matter, pictures or things like that. Let me download some pictures so I can get to make this a little prettier. What used to happen is beforehand you didn't used to be able to do things like this. You couldn't just select random places on the grid and copy and paste and do all the things that you can do in, say, Excel. Because the selection model in ComicBase once upon a time was very, very dated. It was only kind of grudgingly existing that there were things called grids. And so whenever you selected, it was effectively also selecting the whole line. No matter where you were clicking, it was always doing really that plus that. I can't even do it anymore because it's kind of a weird thing to do. If you want to do things that involve the whole line, so in other words, if I want to see like, well, what's happening with Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey number 1, I got to actually select the line. I don't just select, the cost field, right? I got to actually select the line. And so you do that by clicking at the far left, and that's a change between ComicBase here. We're basically using the same kind of selection criteria you would see in, say, Excel now, whereas beforehand we used a kind of a Frankenstein monster thing that was taken over from the Mac version like about 100 years ago. That it did kind of like one nice kind of side effect, which is that I could have some of these line things happen automatically no matter where I selected, even if I did crazy things like that. But it didn't. We made the best of the side effect on that one, but it was certainly not the way the world was intended to work. I guess is how that goes down. Okay, and then questions about Big Little books. Can't find the Carl Barks library of Walt Disney's collected stories. Well, let me see. If I were doing something like this, and it's one of our favorite questions, like how do I find that weird thing I can't find? Usually what I do is I look for the weirdest book, the weirdest name in the title, and I start typing that, because it'll find it, it'll find it at the start if it can, but if not, in this case, like, if I want to find the color, you see Carl Barks Library of Walt Disney's Comics and Stories. So I'm thinking of all the words in that. Well, Disney, there's a lot of Disneys, right? Comics, obviously, there's a lot of things that start with comics, but there can't be that many things called Barks. And so I think this is probably the one you're thinking of, the Carl Barks Library. So what I did is I took the weirdest word in the thing I'm looking for. I typed that, and it really cut down on how far I got to go. And then I'm going to go ahead and download all these ones so I can see if these look like the ones I'm looking for, and I suspect it probably is. But that's how I would go about finding weird titles that especially that don't have barcodes. If it has a barcode, I would just go straight to the barcode, punch it in there, and pop that in. All right. And the Gladstone series, not getting the value graph either. If you're not getting a value graph, again, click the whole line, make sure it has enough room to display, and also make sure you set the view to say include value graph. And also, if I've sized it down so much that it doesn't have room to display, like that, you see how it went away? and then I come up under here and I say View Include Value Graph, notice how it'll slide down just enough to be able to show it to me. But yeah, go ahead and click on the far left and make sure it's got enough room to display, and it'll display. Now, the stipulation on that, though, is that only works for the Pro and the Archive Edition. If you've got the Express or the Free, it does not have a graph. So that's a thing. Actually, I'm going to take that back. It might... I think it has just a link to Atomic Avenue there, but you won't see a graph because the Express and the Free versions don't have any kind of value history. They just have a single data point for the value. They don't have the going back 4 years price that the other editions have. All right. Okay, and we caught up on the chat almost. Find hard to activate the condition bar when new issues are being listed. Little arrows hidden. Have to click on it. So if you're looking in the main grid, if you click on it, you know, if you double click on it, you will get the drop down like that. One thing you can do also is just if you just click, and you know, if you either double click, it'll size up like that. You can click and then start typing. Like if I type a V, it'll go, you know, very fine to near mint. If I want to type good, you know, you can just start doing things like that. You can go up, down, left, right, etc. Yeah, it's a mechanic of the way the Windows drop-downs work. This is just a standard, you know, Windows drop-down control. We haven't done a lot to customize that, so it's whatever Microsoft thought was a good default behavior, I guess, is what we have there. But if you have ways that you'd like to customize that, I'd be interested in getting more details from you. All right, so let's see here. All right, so let's go on to what I had actually meant to talk about, because we were getting a lot of questions about pictures. Specifically, you know, why do pictures? Where are they all located? What's the deal with the thumbnails? I'm looking at my notes here. This is why I'm glancing off to the side. How do we refresh the pictures? How do we download them? And how do we scan them? So I figured, what the heck? Let's just hit pictures just as a topic. Okay, so you might have noticed that usually when I come in here, I come full guns blazing in terms of, you know, showing, you know, everything's always got loaded up pictures, because I'm usually looking at my copy of the database. For this timeout, I actually went and I stripped it down, so I'm looking at almost nothing is loaded, so I could show how that stuff all gets done and how it all goes. Let's start with the whys and the wherefores of pictures, right? Pictures are just, well, in addition to being cool, they do a lot of really useful things in ComicBase. Let's go ahead and pull up the infamous titles window here, which I guess, for at least on somebody's machine, is really super slow. But anyway, so if I had all the pictures loaded up on here, one thing this lets me do is it lets me just instantly figure out, like, let's go back to, like, say, the Barks libraries. You know, let me make this argument slightly more compelling. Give me just a moment here. Let's take a brief detour in how we set up our pictures, because right now I have almost no pictures loaded and it's kind of getting in my way. So let me take the topic out of order. All right, when you get ComicBase, you bought it with well, if you bought it in one of 3 different versions. But if you just have ComicBase, it comes in one of 4 different versions. So the free version, it's a demo, right? The deal on that is it comes packed with, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 pictures of, you know, big titles from Marvel, DC, pretty much the end of it. And we put the number ones there. And the whole goal is, it's almost like if you open up an Overstreet price guide and just saying, okay, look, I'm looking at Justice League versus Batman, or whatever the thing is, you know, versus Terminator. I want to know which series I'm looking at. So if I'm looking at Justice League, first series versus second series versus third series, if I flip over and I see the number 1, I get a sense of the trade dress, I get a sense of the era, I can see the cover price there. It gives me a sense of, like, am I looking at the right listing? And that's really what the original model of ComicBase, when we started out, remember, we started off 6 floppy disks, you know, almost 30 years ago. You know, the idea of having this bonanza of pictures was unheard of. I mean, nobody had them, you know. But anyway, but it was just there to help you identify the series. Well, pictures unfortunately also take up space, so even when it became, you know, easier for us to, you know, gather lots of pictures, because we spent, you know, 30 years doing that, We have a problem in that if we include too many pictures with, say, the free version or the Express version, the installer itself gets to be huge. So like the Express installer is about 1 gigabyte to download, and that's because it wraps up all the pictures that come with it in as part of the same installer. The Express version and the free version, they're meant to be our starter versions, and so we want to make it so it's just a one-click install everything. It's as easy as it can be. But after about 1 gig, it gets really hard for a lot of people to download that one. And even then, just when you've gotten it downloaded, if you have one of those really older machines that has a hard time dealing with things like lists of 60,000 titles, just the act of double-clicking an installer and saying, please decompress yourself just so you can even start running can take a minute or two on some of these older machines. So we don't want to make the installers any bigger than all that. And so with any of the versions higher than Express, we broke the pictures out into their own separate installer. And we install them separately in the program through a command called Manage Pictures and Movies. Let me show you that one over here. So if I come up under here and I say, well, first of all, we gave a shortcut in ComicBase 2020 because honestly, when we were writing the instructions of how to install it, we wanted to have as few steps as possible. So a quick way to get there, if what you mean to be doing is installing, is just go down here to File and say File, Install Pictures and Movies. At which point, it's going to immediately try to go find your pictures archive. It's going to look in your downloads if you've downloaded it automatically, and it'll find it if it's there to be downloaded. Now this guy over here, it does not have one, but let me go ahead and go to one of our build computers, so I can go ahead and pretend that I've just got an image of one of the disks in my drive. So give me just a second here. Let's go to my Dropbox. Let's go to where are we at? ComicBase 2020. And let's pretend I got an archive edition, and I'm going to install the pictures on disk 1. All right. So when you first get ComicBase, if you have any of the archive editions or the Pro editions, it's going to automatically try to find this archive, this picture.zip file right wherever you've got it. And now, if you got the Pro, it's quite a bit smaller than this. If you got the archive, it's the smallest of them is 6.5 gigabytes, and they get larger from there. For this reason, I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to go out instead of the archive one. I'm going to go to a Pro one, and let's install the pictures off the Pro. And I'm going to yap while that's talking. And what this says is, hey, I found a picture archive here. Do you want to install it? The answer is yes, I do. All right. At which point, it says installing picture files. This will take several minutes, and it's going to open up. If you look down at your screen at the very bottom, let me see if I can make this larger. You'll see that it opened up this little tiny weird looking window down here. And we used to have, this used to be my favorite alert in the entire program, is it used to have like an aesthetic warning. It used to say, warning, there's going to be a little black box that appears that's so ugly you'll want to avert your eyes. Well, I guess we decided somewhere along the line we were going to make it so we didn't show the little black box. But if you'd like to see the little black box, you'll notice it opened up down here. And if I do open it up, and I turn off magnification so I can see it, now, because my eyes are sensitive, I made this a white box by default. But you'll see what it's doing here is it is decompressing that 2.7 gigabyte file and unwrapping the 57,000 or however many. I want to say it's like 42,000 pictures that's in it, which is in the archive edition. And it's basically just doing a big decompress of it right here. It's actually 2/3 done. So while I was yapping, it did most of the work. So anyway, it's going to go ahead and do this. Now, as it's doing all this, let me think what I can tell you that's interesting. So let's talk a little bit about this dialogue right here, Manage Pictures and Movies. All right, so we want pictures in ComicBase because they help us identify titles, they help us identify images, we can print them on labels, they can print them on the reports. They're just darned useful to have. The problem is you need to have a lot of them. And matter of fact, in the current version of ComicBase, there are 650,000, actually 658,000 pictures in the archive edition. I think there's 42,000 in the actually, I want to say that number's low now. It's probably close to 50,000 or more in the professional edition, and those are just showing you the number ones of all the different titles. Anyway, what these are doing here is they're going to live on a place on your machine. And the place where they live is this location right here. This is the default right now. It's going to be your users folder directory. So the public users directory. Now, public is, if you ever looked at your machine and you looked at the documents folders, there's a concept of your private documents, and there's the ones that are shared between all the users on the machine. We figure if you're going to install 50,000 or 650,000 pictures on your machine, we don't want to do this if there are more than one people using your machine. We don't want to do that twice. So we put that out there in the public documents area so that everyone on your machine gets to use the same ones. They're kept in a subfolder called Human Computing, right? And this is the default location. In almost all cases, this is where I would tell anyone to install the pictures to. And matter of fact, we have this big friendly reset button if you've ever changed it to anything else, which puts it back to the default location in case you've changed it to someplace else. Now, when I copied, I got a choice to say, do I want to copy the pictures, copy the movies, or both? So if there was movies in the archive I was looking at, it would talk about whether I copy those in. And finally, do I want to replace the matching file? So if I have pictures of my own that I've scanned, I might not want to replace those. If I don't scan my own pictures, I would almost always suggest saying replace matching, because one thing about ComicBase is the new pictures are, there's about 1,000 new ones we put on an average week, and they're always either upgrades to the old versions or they're brand new. But I would generally, if we have a better scan of a comic book, let us replace it for you, unless you have your own personal scan, which is probably better than us, or at the very least is for your personal item, in which case I would say leave these guys, I would say go ahead and leave these checked if you think that there might possibly be anything that needs overwriting. Alright, so it says it's done copying files now. So now that I've copied up and this is just copying up just the pro pictures. That just took a minute or two on this machine. And so suddenly you'll notice as soon as I'm flipping through things, suddenly more things are popping in here. I'm actually getting to see what these titles look like. And also, more importantly, if I now go to here and I say something like Avengers, right? Remember how before I was typing and you'd see like the the dates that things would happen, but you wouldn't really get a sense for what series really it was. So I can tell, there's volume 2, that's the the Liefeld one where everyone's triceps are bigger than their head. I always loved Liefeld, anatomy. Volume 3, Volume 4, so it's much easier to move around and see, well, which series am I really talking about when I'm talking about the Avengers or anything else. So if I did nothing else in ComicBase, even if I for whatever reason I hate pictures, I resent having the space taken up on my hard drive for them, I would definitely install at least the number ones, the equivalent of the pros. But there's also a really good reason for you to install all of them if you have the archive edition, and that answer is, other than it's cool, is variants. When you start talking about like the Avengers, right? All right, so I gave you the number 1, right? What's the 1A one look like? Well, I don't know. I might be able to suss it out from artist credits. I might be able to suss it out from some kind of notes or things like that. But what really helps, the barcode will probably be different, and so I could probably mix and match and compare and figure out eventually what the difference between all these is. But it's a lot simpler if I simply say, you know what, show me the different ones. And if I have the archive edition, I can just go ahead and download them all and hit them this way. And so, oh yeah, hey, that's the one with Scarlet Witch, leaning back against Thor on the cover. This is the one with Captain America center. And so it's really easy to see what you're doing if you're doing stuff like this. Furthermore, if I'm printing things like labels, this little thing is going to show up on the label, and so it's going to be much easier for me to tell what's going on when I'm just managing my collection. We did some statistical analysis of Diamond's new releases, I want to say about 18 months ago. And at the time, it was something like 68% of all new comics was a variant of one sort or another. So even if you don't like variants, even if you would not normally ever want to get involved with variants, I would say it's worth a lot, to me at least, to say having the photo reference there, which tells me, oh, okay, that's the A variant, that's the B, that's the regular version, that's the A variant, that's the here's what 4 and 4A look like. I guess that's the chibi version, etc. This stuff helps a lot. All right, while we're talking about installing pictures, things that people get wrong when they install pictures. And honestly, this is something I'm gonna take the blame on this one, because anything that is confusing enough to cause problems for y'all is a problem for us, and we want to not have y'all be confused. So one of the things that people get wrong when they install pictures, well, the first thing they get wrong is when they're going up under here and they go to File Tools and they go Manage Pictures and Movies, and they're saying their location for picture movies. Remember, I make a big deal. It's like, man, unless you got a real strong reason not to, leave this at the default, or if you need to, hit reset and put it back to the default. A lot of times people will do is they'll set this to something else, and typically they'll set it a little too low. Like, if I go ahead and I choose this, like right now you notice it's pointing to my public documents human computing folder, because this, and here, this is important. This is the location which contains my pictures and movies folders. It's not the pictures movie itself, it's the one that contains the pictures and movies folders. So if I look at that, let's have a look at that folder. So let's go out to C, and let's go find documents, users. Where are we at here? I want, that's my documents. C, yeah, Windows folder structures are the best, aren't they? Here we are. See, I could have just scrolled down and seen it, but no, I had to do it the hard way. All right, so C, users, public documents, human computing. That's the folder that we're currently selected right now. But what's in there right now? All right, this is where we put things like the little flags that appear right at the top of all the foreign titles. We put logos for publishers that you don't, you may or may not have. If you've dragged your own digital comic books in, they live in a media folder inside that. But plus there's your movies, and there's your pictures folders, and there's also thumbnails, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But the main part here is what it's asking you for when you're looking for what your pictures, which contains your pictures and movies folders. Again, is it wants the one, it doesn't want your pictures folder. Don't say pictures, right? You want, because then it'll try to make a pictures folder within that to hold your pictures. You want this folder, the folder that holds them all. All right, that one, and again, I'll totally accept the blame for some of the stuff, and we do try to, if we see you're selecting the pictures inside the pictures, we try to back you up and do things like that, because we know the common errors we lead into. But I do get that this is a kind of a weird concept for choosing this one, which again is why I would strongly suggest just hit the reset button and just leave it be unless you have a strong reason not to. That's probably the number one thing that people get wrong when they're installing pictures. The second thing people get wrong when they're installing pictures, I guess the number two thing would be they don't do it at all. They just kind of go from title to title and say, whenever they're missing some pictures, they kind of say, well, yeah, you don't have the Adventures UK, select all, right click, download. And if you got the archive edition, you can do this, it takes a while, but the internet is reasonably fast. You could do this, but it's a really slow way to get, 658,000 pictures installed. Plus, when you do it that way, they're all going to be watermarked with the atomicavenue.com stamp down here, which, if you've got, fine vision, might bug you. It's there to keep people from just, atomicavenue.com wants to not have everyone just completely ripping off everything they're doing, so they watermark their stuff if you download them that way. But if you go up under here and you say install pictures and movies, and you install them off of the picture archives that came with ComicBase, either on the disk or that you downloaded, then those ones are not watermarked by default. There's an invisible watermark in the EXIF data and some other stuff that keep people from ripping it off, but it's not stuff that the human eye can see. So that's a good thing. So I would definitely, when you get the archive edition or you get the Pro or anything else, install the pictures that came with it before you do anything else, even if you're entitled to download new things. And if there is a new version that comes out during the year, like let's say you've got ComicBase 2020 and ComicBase 2021 comes out, and it comes with new discs, it's worth downloading all those pictures off the discs, because that way, again, you lose the watermarks. It's a little nicer to look at, and a lot of times the pictures are upgraded. That's, I think, the main thing people do wrong when they're installing pictures. There's one really wrong thing you can do, which is when you're choosing your location for pictures and movies. We used to get a lot more stick on this one in terms of tech support than we do now, because we're pretty good at defaulting things to the right folders. But it used to be that Windows, if you didn't have a folder, it would default the folder to if a folder didn't exist on your hard drive yet, it would default the folder to the program folder of the program that installed it. So what would be happening is people would be trying to install their pictures into their, what would it be? It would be your C program files x86 human computing ComicBase 2017 archive edition folder. They'd be trying to install their pictures here, and they would get a access denied error whenever they, you could go ahead and choose this folder. Nothing will stop you from choosing it, but anything that's inside your program files folder or your programs file x86 folder, or for that matter, a few other folders on your hard drive, like the top of your C drive itself, they're actually protected by Windows, where you need to have a higher level of you need to be working with a higher level of access to access those folders and write things to them. Typically, if you chose them and you say I want to install things there, you would keep on getting access denied errors or can't, file locked or things like that. If any of that sounds familiar, it's possibly you're referencing one of these lockdown folders. It's meant to keep bad programs from, like viruses and things like that from writing to certain sensitive folders. But it's not a good thing to do in any case. So just be careful of those folders. Use the defaults is what it kind of comes down to. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to say that people usually get wrong when they don't install pictures is if you're coming from the archive edition, a lot of people will forget that disc 1 has pictures on it. So the archive edition comes on 4 DVDs, right? Why is it 4 DVDs? It's because it's the most we thought any sane person would ever want to install. And also, let's face it, DVDs cost money, they take a long time to duplicate and whatever else. And if we handed you a stack of 20 DVDs or something to install, the program cost $400 and no one's happy. We're it would just be ludicrous. But one thing on that is we use every freaking inch of that of those DVDs to cram as much data as we possibly can onto the program. So if you install all 4, it's something like 30 or 32 gigabytes of data. And here's a gripe for another time is when you say gigabyte, if you make disks, you measure gigabytes as 10 to the 20, 10 to the 24, 1024 is your version of 1000. If a gigabyte in real life was it 2 to the 10th power, or 10,024 is the actual number. If you're a disk manufacturer, you get away with saying gigabyte, 1,000, that's pretty close. And so the computer term for it does not match the marketing term for the disk drives. So as a result, a 9 gigabyte DVD really only holds like 8.2 gigabytes of real data and so forth. So anyway, take it up with the disk manufacturers. But we are cramming as much data as we possibly can into the whole thing, which means we also, in addition to having the program on disk 1, we also have pictures on disk 1 and movies and everything else we can down there. So install all of them is what it kind of comes down to. All right, so and then finally, I want to say about installing pictures. Some people again will say, "Hey, I don't want to install them because it takes a space. I don't need pictures. Pictures are for cowards who don't know their comics." But whatever the thing is, ComicBase will actually run slightly faster if you have installed the pictures, because ComicBase will spend a fair amount of time looking for pictures when it does certain things, and so you get to, if it always finds it the first time it looks, it doesn't look at 6 other places to see if it's there. So you can make things run a little bit faster if you do install the pictures. So anyway, that's the questions on that one. All right, thumbnails. You might have noticed when we're talking about when we saw those picture folders. Let's go back in there again and have a look at where we've got our pictures at. So I'm going to go up here and all right. So I'm installing pictures to public documents, human computing, and let's go ahead and have a look in that folder now. So if I make this larger, here's what everything that's in that folder, right? You'll notice that one of the things that's in there is thumbnails. Where did thumbnails come from? Well, if you start out brand new on your machine, there was no thumbnails folder. It created them as it went. What the thumbnails are is they're little tiny versions of the main picture folders, which we can pull up super fast when we need to. And they come in whatever sizes we are using in our grids. So my grid over here is set to 48, so I've got a 48 folder that just magically got created. And it's organized the same way the regular folders are. So if I want to look at the Avengers from Marvel UK, or Marvel over here, here it is right there. There's Marvel, and then under A, and here's the Avengers UK right there. And it's got a whole ton of little tiny images of these things right here. And the reason we do that, and let's go ahead and go to something with no pictures on it, is because I want, if I had to go to the original pictures to draw every single one of these things right here, drawing this grid going backward and forward be pretty slow. But you notice I can go right here, and even though these titles have hundreds and hundreds of issues, they load pretty much instantly because I'm drawing a very small picture of them. And also, if I've got the picture and and it doesn't have a thumbnail for it anymore, the very first time I go to that title, it'll go and make the thumbnail. So what this means is over time you're going to wind up having tens of thousands of thumbnail folders on your computer, which provide this sort of quick images of the different sizes that of the pictures you've got. This actually is not unheard of. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but one of the other places on your computer that they do things like that is, frankly, there's a hidden folder hidden file inside every single one of your folders. Called desktop.inf or .ico, which has all the icons of all the documents you have that you would ever show in any kind of view in Windows. So because having to go check out each document, load up what the thing looks like, draw a little picture of it, if it had to do that every single time you opened a folder, it would take forever to show any folder. So it sort of banks, just like we do, it sort of banks what the little thumbnails are off in a little secret invisible file. And if you ever find that, like, say, all your icons for, like, your vacation photos, went away for some day, that means something went wrong with your desktop icon file. But anyway, we've got the same thing going on with ComicBase in terms of the thumbnails. Now, this is one of those things that I'd say, unless you are just fanatical, leave them alone. They're not doing you any harm. They're very small files. The fact that there are a jillion of them, they're buried deep in your folder structure, is not hurting anyone. Just like all those little icon files, they're hidden all over your machine for all your icons. They're not hurting anybody. Just leave them be. They're fine. The only time they kind of grind things to a halt is if you're doing like some kind of disk check or something like that, where it starts going into these icon folders and it says, wow, there's a lot of files here. I'm going to check every single last one of these. So it might be good if you do have like an antivirus check or something like that. You might want to add that to your list of folders to exclude from checking, just to speed things up if you're really fanatical about your machine. But by and large, I'd say leave them be. One place where this might get wrong, and I don't immediately have a great solution for it. And are we back? Alright, I hope we are back, guys. We just had a brief power blip. Didn't do us in too badly here, and thank God for UPSs. I think we're still on the air. But anyway, let's hope for the best here. I hope you guys can all still see me, because I don't think we lost connectivity. Anyway, what we're gonna do, but we did, remember I was telling you all hell was breaking loose outside? We went from cloudless sky to it's now pouring cats and dogs, thunder and lightning, because welcome to the South, y'all. Anyway, back to thumbnails. One thing that could possibly get a little bit weird is if you've got something like, let me go to something with a lot of variance in it. Like, let's go to with the darkness. This one actually bit me recently in a sale I made on Atomic Avenue. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and download all these guys. Alright, so let's go down to Darkness 11, right? And you see how we've got all these different covers for number 11, right? Somewhere along the line, someone decided the variants were different than what we originally listed them as. Or we could have, the editors might have gotten a little bit sloppy and they might have accepted a variant that was not the right cover. So if I submitted the variant for B and by calling it E, and the editors over at ComicBase Central accepted that, they could have done you in. Because they could have given you the wrong variant for that book. Now, you might not necessarily have known that right away, because let's say I had taken a new version of number F, but it looked like B. Well, when I'm going from title to title here, right, and I go back here, even if I swap the picture file behind the scenes for B, it's not necessarily, remember, it goes and looks for the thumbnail first. If I've got a new version of this picture behind the scenes, unless I go and click on it, it's never going to try to load the full picture. And so it'll never update the thumbnail because it doesn't know it changed. Now, anytime ComicBase downloads a new picture on purpose, it tries to update your thumbnails. But there are some certain circumstances where maybe that didn't happen right. That is the only time I would suggest going in there and cleaning out your thumbnails folder. And if you did want to do that, what you would do is basically this. You'd go to your File menu, go to File Tools, have a look at where your Pictures and Movies folder was. Go to this folder. Scroll down, open it, and find your thumbnails folder, and then go ahead and blow it away. You can actually right-click on it and blow it away right from here. Just hit delete. In which case it'll kill the thumbnails folder. You won't hurt anything because it'll just regenerate it. It'll build them at all the same sizes again. It'll build it from the pictures you've actually got on your disk. But that's the only time I would go and look at that. All right, last thing I want to say about pictures, and then I'm going to kind of get ready to wrap her up here, that is how do you scan pictures and send them to us? Because man, do we appreciate it when you do that. All right, so let's go back to our friends, the darkness over here, and let's say you've got a picture of 11B that's better than ours, right? Or let's say that you've got one for one of these other variants that we just don't have a picture of. The Darkness Collector's Set number 2. If anyone has this one, it's apparently a collected edition. It collected the Darkness number 7 through 10, Witchblade 18 to 19, and Darkness Origins Volume 2. Nobody we have ever seen has this issue. So if you've got one in your collection, one thing you could do that would be a very lovely thing to do for us is go ahead, scan that issue in using whatever scanning software you've got. Photoshop we love, especially if you have scanner support for it. And what you want to do is you want to save that at the magic numbers here, and I'll try to put this in the show notes. The magic numbers are 300 DPI, 300 dots per inch scanning. You could go higher if you want. We won't stop you, but over 300 DPI, you're kind of kidding yourself. You're not adding anything to the process, given the way comic books are printed. Weird little thing of printing technology, if any of you guys care, is a fine print job. So if you run a commercial printing shop and you're going to print things at high resolution, that's typically done at 133 lines per inch. For people who run offset things, which means that the dots, DPI that goes into making that is twice the lines per inch, which is 266. Now they kind of round that up to 300 for computers because what the heck, why not? But going to 600 or 800 or whatever else. If you are taking something that was printed at 133 lines per inch and you're scanning it at 3200 dots per inch, all you're really doing is catching printer dots. You're not catching anything of the original design because the original design's already been approximated down to essentially 266 DPI. Now there's some very, very, very upper end art books that are printed a little bit more resi than that, but honestly not much more. So 300 dots per inch is tons. So scan 300 dots per inch. Scan the entire comic book, and please, you would do us a great favor if you crop it in so we don't see any white hanging off the sides of the whole thing when it's all said and done. If you don't do it, we got to do it, and honestly, we got a lot of work on our plate anyway. So if you could help us out by scanning it in so you get a nice clean rectangle with the comic book in it. So anyway, save that as a JPEG. Save it at the highest possible quality, which in Photoshop is going to be a quality of 12. And save it and call it whatever the comic book is called. So if I was going to do the scan for Darkness number 1, what I would do is call this picture. Let me go ahead and show it to you. If I go and right click on that, I'm going to say show the picture folder. And this is what these actually look like on my machine. So the one for number 1 is, let's see if I can magnify this. Seriously? Did I lose? I lost my mouse magnification along with that power shot here. This was kind of fun. Anyway, but that's called 1.jpg. So just issue number 1.jpg. If it's 1A or 1/A, let's look at that guy right down here. That guy right there, 1/A. that becomes 1-a.jpg, because I can't have a slash in a file name on Windows. If it is a 0.5 issue, make sure you put 0.5. And if it's something else like those, I was talking about the collected editions, those were CS, right? So CS1 right down there, .jpg. You'll notice that that correlates to right here, that guy right there. And so if you happen to have darkness collected set number 2, just call it CS space 2.jpg, and then once you've got it, take it on your machine right here. I'm going to demonstrate it here with this guy. Let me go and pull one of these off, and let's go to CS. I'm going to pull CS1 out of its folder, right? And by the way, you'll notice something with the thumbnails. If I come out here, it does do a quick check to see whether that file still exists. So as soon as I pulled it out of the folder, you notice that the thumbnail for CS1 went away. Alright, so let's have a look now and see if I can figure out where that item is on my desktop, because I just dragged it there. And there it is. Okay, CS2. Alright, so here's the one I dragged out of that folder. Now if I want to put that, you know, let's say I've just scanned CS2 here, you know, or CS1. All I gotta do, drag it on top of the grid, just like that, and it's gonna magically get filed in the right place. It's gonna make a copy, but it's gonna get magically filed in the right place. It'll make the thumbnail, it'll appear in ComicBase, and if I go and I show it in the folder right here, you will see that it just popped in right there. So if you happen to have the picture of CS2, you would just call it CS2, right here, drag it in, and then you see that pop up. Now obviously this is the wrong picture, but you get the idea. Alright, that is the long and the short of scanning pictures. Oh, I'm sorry. The very last thing to do, please, if you've done that, right click on the whole thing, right click, and say submit new or corrected data. Alright, what that's going to do is it would tell us, you know, thanks very much. Once you got it, it'll give it, and I'm lying to it here. I told I have a picture of the real CS2, and I don't, right? But it says, hey, could we have, you know, so you've got a picture for one we didn't have before. Can we have it? I'm going to say no, because I don't want to send a bad copy of the picture to us at ComicBase, because I just made that up. I was lying. But if you do have one, if you would send it to us, it helps a lot, because what we can do then is we can put that out to everyone, and then they get it in the next update. Alright, let's take a quick look back at the chat, and then we'll kind of close it out here. Magazine numbering, Scott asks, if the default listing is 3 to 4 digit volume number form, but the magazine has a regular issue number, is there a way to change the issue number, but the magazine... Wow, Scott, please, if you could follow up via email to support. I'm going to need to get some more info on that one, because I'm not sure I'm fully understanding the question. There might be a way to do what you're talking about, but I'm not sure I understand the situation, so I'm going to have to table that one for now. John says it takes a long time to get the pictures off the disk. It might. You know, in my when I'm copying off of a hard drive, typically I can install the disks on my machine in about 6 minutes per, but then I've got a pretty fast SSD. If you're coming off the disk, it can take longer. It's whatever the speed of your CD drive is, but let it roll. It's a one-time deal. It shouldn't be that bad, all things considered, I hope. And John says, I get one Blu-ray disc. That is not a bad way to go. The Blu-ray disc, the difference between the Archive Edition and the Pro, or the rest of them, is the Pro will have the #1 issues. It'll have the pictures, they'll be kind of small. The Archive Edition will have the pictures as big, up to about 1,000 pixels tall, which at 96 dpi, which is the Windows standard, means they're going to be exactly as big as the real comic book. If you put the comic book up to your screen, it'll basically match. For some range of resolutions and monitors, but at least with old school classic Windows monitors, it would be kind of a 1-to-1 match, or at least very close to that. So we chose that, and then for Blu-ray, what we did on the pictures is we basically set the target size to be a 4K image, which means a 3840 wide by 1920 high. I think I got those dimensions right, but image as the standard. default. Somebody told me I just got the Y image wrong, but maybe I got it. And I think 1920. I think that's it. But anyway, what we'll do is anything we've got that was in one of these super resi formats, we'll preserve it in the super high resi format up to that size, and we cram as many of those as we can onto the disc as well. So you'll get, if you have a 4K monitor and you want the stuff to look as pretty as it's ever going to look, the Blu-ray is for you. It's a one disc install, which is, yeah, that part's kind of cool. Andre asks, how much space does it need on disk for all the covers? So if you've got the Pro, it takes about 2.5 gigs. If you've got the Express or the Free, it's a little over a gig. If you have the Archive Edition, it's about 32 gigs now. And if you have the Blu-ray Edition, it takes about 46 gigs. And here's, if you also, I meant to give this as an announcement, we're getting ready to ship the Quarters Blu-ray update. Another thing about the Blu-ray edition is if you get it, you not only get the resiest images we can pack out to you, but we also give you 4 times a year, we give you an update disc with everything in the art library at the best resolution we can fit it onto. Well, even that, our art library is so big now, we're offering a deal. The deal goes like this. If you're willing to write us and tell us you would like it in download format instead of sending you a disc, because we're going to pay for the bandwidth, and it's going to cost us about as much as it costs to send you the disc. So we can't do both. But if you say I would like it as a download instead of as a Blu-ray, we'll offer you the ability to also get it in BDXL format, which is 100 gig. It's even resier than the regular Blu-ray. We get to show the JPEGs at even higher quality, but that's an exclusive offer we're throwing out there as kind of a test. But if you write to support at comicbase.com and say I'm a Blu-ray customer, I'd like to be on the download list, we'll do is we'll take you off the shipping list and we'll send you the secret BDXL links whenever those come out. But the third quarter Blu-ray, by the way, is shipping next week, so if you have the Blu-ray edition, get ready to see that in your mailbox. And if you want it as download, send us a note to support at comicbase.com. Say send me a download instead. Okay. Hey Pete, switch to the 200 gigabyte Blu-ray disc. Dude, if you've ever seen a 200 gigabyte Blu-ray, I want to talk to me. I was like, no, for really. BDXLs are what they use to author basically Blu-ray. They use them to author 3D Blu-ray movies or dual layer Blu-ray movies. That's the authoring format of those ones. As far as I can tell, they have no use other than that. It's a format that just never took off, and the media themselves is like $15 a slice. I mean, God help you if you spent 2.5 hours burning one of those and the disc biffed, because then you just lighting $20 bills on your wallet on fire. It's just crazy expensive for that. So that's something we would probably have an easier time distributing thumb drives, you know, if we want to get a higher density than that, than we would using BDXL media, or if there's a media higher than BDXL, I don't know. But honestly, we have been looking into it. The Blu-ray download, the BDXL download, is the best we can think of at the moment. But we are trying that out, and if you're interested, give us a call. Okay, found something. And with the labels, if the labels for a comic without a barcode entered by hand, the number will not print on the label. When I scan the barcode in Notepad, there are no letters. Slider 999A. Some of the price labels don't have the human visible portion there, but it still will appear as a, if you actually take your barcode scanner and you scan it in using the proper CodaBar format, you will still get what would have been there. But if you're having trouble with that, give support a call. We'll troubleshoot with you. But it's honestly, the barcode labels they're pretty bulletproof. My guess is there's probably something going wrong with the scan. But all right. I see Ghost Pete behind the AA robot on the hammock. Really? Oh, yeah, sorry. Reflections, yes, because it's getting dark in the room now. If I select to download all the latest variant covers, will you get the watermarks in Archive Edition? Yes, if you're downloading them, but not if you install them from the disc. And if you install them off the Blu-ray, you also won't get them as watermarked. If we get them to you on disc, basically, we have some control over, where they came from and stuff. And so, Atomic Avenue, if you ever download and they were in the picture at all, they're going to stamp a watermark on it. So, download off the disc if you possibly can. Okay, and it says, undersea my comment 50 gig, yes, thanks, saw it, yes, no, thanks. All right, guys, ran a little long, we had interesting stuff going on with weather. Thanks so much for sticking with us, and hope you'll join us next time. Please hit the like and subscribe, and I'm going to go off, and I'm not going to sit on my porch, but I am going to go out and have a beer. So, thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.